What transpires when a high-flying CEO chooses to go undercover, only to encounter prejudice within his own establishment? It was a Saturday morning, a little past 10 a.m. Terrence Hall adjusted his baseball cap in the rearview mirror. The man looking back at him was almost unrecognizable. Not the executive who had forged a multi-million-dollar retail empire, but simply another face in the bustling crowd. His simple hoodie and jeans were a stark departure from the custom-tailored suits that typically defined his workdays. Today wasn't about board meetings or financial reports. It was about immersing himself in his own world, unannounced, to observe it through the eyes of a complete stranger. Terrence had always championed the power of human connection. His enterprise was built on the fundamental promise that every single customer mattered, irrespective of their background. However, recently faint murmurs of grievances had begun to surface. Whispers of subpar service, evident bias, and a noticeable lack of attentiveness from his personnel. If there was any truth to these assertions, he needed to ascertain it firsthand, not as the boss but as someone directly experiencing it. The retail outlet in question was situated just outside Dallas, Texas, within a bustling suburban complex. It wasn't the flagship location, nor was it the top-performing store in his expansive chain. Yet this particular branch held significant personal meaning. It was the inaugural store Terrence had launched beyond his home state, a venture that had yielded considerable success. He had frequented it countless times in its nascent stages, but now, years later, he couldn't help but ponder whether the warmth and inclusivity he had envisioned had genuinely endured. Terrence pulled into a parking spot and drew a deep breath. A mix of eager anticipation and a touch of apprehension settling over him. He was on the verge of stepping into the unknown, shedding the protective cloak of his corporate title to ascertain if his core values still resonated at the very bedrock of his enterprise. The unvarnished truth, however discomforting it might be, was something he owed to himself and to every individual who walked through those doors. But what Terrence couldn't foresee was that his unwavering commitment to unearthing the truth would lead him to an indelible moment. One that would fundamentally challenge everything he believed he knew about his own organization. Terrence stepped out of his vehicle and into the lively parking area. The sun was already high, casting sharp, bright reflections off the nearby car windshields. He repositioned the strap of his well-worn canvas messenger bag, the kind a typical shopper might carry casually. Today he wasn't CEO Terrence Hall. He was simply another patron with a name no one needed to recognize. The storefront gleamed under the sunlight, its distinctive logo prominent and familiar. He couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction as he neared the automatic doors. This was his creation, a concept transformed into tangible reality. But that sense of accomplishment swiftly yielded to sharp focus as he crossed the threshold, the cool rush of air conditioning offering a refreshing welcome inside. The store buzzed with activity. Shoppers maneuvered carts filled with various items, and children's voices rose and fell in excited chatter near the toy section. Employees in their uniforms moved with purpose, replenishing shelves, processing transactions and assisting customers. To an uncritical observer, everything appeared to be operating seamlessly. But Terrence wasn't there to merely skim the surface. He was there to delve deeper. He paused near an exhibit of vibrant kitchen appliances, taking in his immediate surroundings. A young woman, clad in a striped uniform jacket, stood nearby, engaging in a conversation with a customer about product specifications. A stock assistant meticulously rearranged items on an adjacent shelf, his actions efficient yet somewhat disengaged. And there, at the far end of the establishment, stood a younger man, casually leaning against the counter of the electronics department, idly scrolling on his mobile device. Terrence decided to proceed in that direction. He meandered through the aisles, deliberately adopting the unhurried pace of a casual browser. He picked up a pair of headphones, turning them over in his hands as if genuinely contemplating a purchase. It was a straightforward yet revealing test. Would this employee approach him, offer help, a smile, anything? But there was no response. The young man barely glanced up from his phone, let alone acknowledged his presence. Terrence waited, providing the employee every chance to initiate an interaction. Still nothing. An unsettling sensation began to coalesce in his gut, but he wasn't yet ready to draw firm conclusions. Perhaps the employee was preoccupied. Perhaps he hadn't even noticed Terrence. Terrence moved onward, surveying the aisles, observing interactions. He spotted an older woman appearing to need assistance near the home goods section. She seemed flustered, looking around for help. Before Terrence could intervene to see how the situation unfolded, a second employee approached her, radiant and attentive. Relief softened her features as they began to converse. It was a stark contrast to his recent experience. But as Terrence turned back toward the electronics counter, intent on giving the young man another opportunity, what transpired next would make it unequivocally clear that this wasn't merely an isolated oversight. It was something far more significant. Terrence returned to the electronics counter, this time holding a packaged set of Bluetooth speakers. He placed the box gently on the counter, the sort of action that should naturally capture someone's attention. The young employee finally looked up, his expression blank and uninterested. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone conveying a distinct lack of enthusiasm for assisting. Terrence offered a slight smile, hoping to alleviate the awkward atmosphere. "Yeah, I was curious if you could tell me a bit more about these. Are they suitable for outdoor use?" The employee gave the box a perfunctory glance before shrugging. "I don't know. Probably," he said, his attention already drifting back to his phone. Terrence blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Could you perhaps check? I'd like to be sure before I purchase them." The employee sighed audibly as if Terrence's request was an immense burden. Without a word, he snatched the box, flipped it over and cursorily scanned the back. "It says here they're weatherproof," he mumbled, handing it back without further explanation. Terrence felt a surge of frustration welling up, but he maintained a calm voice. "Hey. And do you know if they're compatible with most devices?" The employee rolled his eyes. "Look man, all the details are right here on the box. You can read it yourself," he gestured vaguely toward the shelf, "or pick something else. Doesn't matter to me." A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the distant hum of the store. Terrence could feel the tension creeping into his own posture. This wasn't merely inattentiveness, it was outright disrespect. He glanced around, noticing other customers receiving warm and enthusiastic service from employees. A white couple near the front was getting personalized assistance from the same young man who had helped the older woman earlier. Yet here he was, barely being acknowledged. Determined to remain composed, Terrence decided to push the situation further. "You seem busy," he said, striving to keep his tone neutral. "Is there someone else who might be able to assist?" The employee smirked, the corners of his mouth curling with contempt. "I don't think anyone's free right now. Just figure it out, all right?" The words stung more deeply than Terrence had anticipated. He wasn't angry, not yet. He was profoundly disappointed. This wasn't merely a poor attitude, it was something more profound, something uglier. And it wasn't just about him. If this was how the employee treated someone he presumed to be an ordinary shopper, how many others had departed this store feeling the same sting of indifference? Before he could utter another word, the young man turned away, grabbing his phone and walking off toward the back of the store. Terrence stood frozen in place, holding the box of speakers. For a moment he considered simply walking out. But he swiftly dismissed the notion. He wasn't finished yet. However, what Terrence didn't realize was that this moment of dismissiveness would soon expose a far more troubling aspect of the culture he believed he had cultivated. Terrence carefully placed the speakers back on the shelf, his mind racing with a whirlwind of thoughts. The encounter wasn't just unprofessional, it felt acutely personal. He resolved to explore the store further, observing how other employees engaged with customers. If this solitary experience was an anomaly, he needed to confirm it. If it wasn't, he faced a considerably larger problem. He drifted into the apparel department, where a young Latina employee was meticulously folding shirts at a display. She greeted him warmly, her smile genuinely inviting. "Let me know if you need assistance with anything," she offered. It was a stark contrast to the frigid reception he had just encountered. Terrence lingered, feigning interest in browse, and observed her assisting an elderly gentleman nearby. She was patient and attentive, helping him locate the correct size and even suggesting a complimentary tie. The man's appreciation was evident, and the interaction kindled a small flicker of hope within Terrence. Perhaps the store wasn't entirely off track. But as he moved toward the home goods section, a conversation abruptly halted him. Two employees, both young and casually propped against a shelf, were engaged in a hushed but unmistakably disrespectful exchange. "That guy over there," one of them muttered, subtly jerking his head in Terrence's direction, is probably just here to browse. People like him never buy anything substantial. Terence felt his jaw clench as he pretended to scrutinize a set of pots and pans. The other employee chuckled. Yeah, he doesn't look like he's got the funds for this stuff. Probably just killing time. It was a sharp blow. They had no idea who he was. To them, he was merely another black man strolling through a store, whom they presumed couldn't afford its offerings. The casualness of their conversation, the ease with which they dismissed him, spoke volumes. It wasn't just one problematic employee. It was a pervasive culture that had somehow allowed these attitudes to fester. He remained silent, resisting the urge to confront them then and there. Instead, he moved toward the checkout area, determined to gather as much insight as possible before addressing the underlying issue. At the register, he encountered a middle-aged black woman efficiently processing customer transactions with a kind, professional demeanor. Her name tag identified her as Denise. Terence observed as she greeted each person with a smile, her voice steady and warm. When his turn arrived, she looked up and smiled. Did you find everything to your liking? Not exactly, Terence replied, his tone measured, but I think I'll hold off for now. Denise's smile wavered slightly, but she nodded. Well, if you need anything at all, just let us know. We're here to help. Her sincerity was palpable, and for a moment, it alleviated the burden on Terence's chest. It was clear that not everyone in this store harbored the same dismissive attitudes. Yet it also underscored the glaring inconsistency. Why were some employees so welcoming while others were so flagrantly biased? But as Terence walked out of the store, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something far larger was at play, and he knew it was time to confront the unvarnished truth directly. Terence sat in his car, the afternoon heat pressing against the windows. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring out at the store that proudly displayed his company's emblem. It felt surreal. This enterprise, his source of immense pride and joy, was intended to embody opportunity, equity, and deference. Yet the recent experiences he'd just undergone painted a starkly different picture, one he was utterly unprepared for but could not and would not overlook. The dismissive conduct from the electronics employee lingered in his thoughts, but it was the casual remarks he'd overheard in the home goods department that cut the deepest. These weren't isolated incidents. They alluded to a more profound systemic issue within his corporate culture, one that had evidently gone unchecked. He reflected on the nascent stages of the business, when he had personally mentored every manager and carefully selected staff based on shared principles. Back then, he had emphasized the paramount importance of treating every customer like family, irrespective of their identity or the extent of their expenditure. But as the company burgeoned, maintaining those personal connections became increasingly arduous. Delegation was a necessary evil, but had it come at the prohibitive cost of the very values he had painstakingly cultivated? Terence couldn't help but ponder if he'd grown too detached from the day-to-day operations. Success had brought about expansion, but it had also created significant blind spots. Were managers truly fostering an environment of respect, or were they conveniently overlooking subtle prejudices and unprofessional conduct? Had he neglected to equip his employees with the essential tools to combat inherent biases and ensure equitable treatment for all? He drew a deep breath, his mind replaying the recent interactions. Denise, the affable cashier, served as a potent reminder of what his business ought to represent. Yet, dedicated employees like her were being eclipsed by those who clearly did not share her commendable values. This wasn't solely about the customer experience. It was fundamentally about the culture he had inadvertently allowed to take root. Terence reached for his ubiquitous notebook, habitually stored in the glove compartment, and meticulously jotted down his observations and conclusions. This wasn't merely about rectifying issues in one particular store. It was about ensuring that every single employee across every single location fully grasped the profound responsibility of representing his brand. It was about implementing accountability from the uppermost echelons downwards. But before he could embark on the process of rebuilding, Terence knew there was one crucial final step to undertake. A step that would unveil the true depth of the problem and directly challenge those at its very core. Terence re-entered the store with a quiet, resolute determination. He wasn't there to create a spectacle or publicly humiliate anyone. This wasn't about ego. It was about confronting a cultural drift that had gone astray. He headed directly for the customer service desk and requested to speak with the store manager. After a brief wait, a man in his late 40s approached. His name tag read Brian and his demeanor was professional though slightly guarded. "How may I assist you today?" he inquired. Terrence extended a hand. "Terrence Hall," he stated, observing as Brian's eyes widened in dawning recognition. "I am the owner of this establishment." The manager's composure faltered for a mere instant before he quickly regained it. "Mr. Hall, it's an honor to meet you. Had I known you were visiting..." Terrence raised a hand to interrupt him. "That's precisely the point, Brian. You weren't supposed to know. I came here as an ordinary customer to observe how things are genuinely operating. And what I witnessed today, it was not satisfactory." Brian's face flushed slightly. I am truly sorry to hear that. Can you elaborate on what transpired?" Terrence meticulously recounted the day's events. The indifference from the electronics employee, the overheard derogatory comments, and the striking disparities in how customers were treated. He spoke calmly but firmly, his words carrying the palpable weight of profound disappointment. "This isn't just about one problematic employee," he asserted. "It's about a culture that tacitly permits this kind of behavior to persist. I established this company on the fundamental principle that every customer deserves unwavering respect, regardless of who they are. Today I observed the complete antithesis of that core value." Brian shifted uncomfortably. I was genuinely unaware of these specific issues. I've always diligently strived to ensure our team adheres to the company's stated values." Terrence nodded. "I believe you. However, it's unequivocally clear that something is slipping through the cracks. And it's not solely your responsibility. It's also mine. Somewhere along the journey, I've permitted the foundational values upon which I built this company to become diluted. That ends today." He instructed Brian to assemble the entire staff for an impromptu meeting in the break room. Within minutes, the employees were gathered, their expressions a mixture of intense curiosity and palpable apprehension. Terrence stood before them, no longer merely another customer, but the unanticipated leader. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "For those of you who may not recognize me, my name is Terrence Hall. I am the founder and chief executive officer of this company. And today I came here covertly to personally witness how operations are unfolding on the ground level." The room fell into an immediate, profound silence, the gravity of his words sinking in with palpable weight. Terrence took a deliberate moment to look into each face before continuing. "What I observed today was deeply troubling. Some of you demonstrated remarkable kindness and professionalism, precisely the caliber of attitude upon which this company was founded. But others failed to meet even the most fundamental standards of basic respect. And that failure isn't solely on your shoulders. It's on mine for not ensuring our core culture remains consistently upheld." He turned directly toward the young electronics employee, who now appeared visibly pale and agitated. "You dismissed me, completely ignored me, and made it unequivocally clear that I was not worth your time. That is absolutely unacceptable. But even more egregious, I overheard 2 employees speaking about me, making sweeping assumptions about my identity and financial means based on nothing more than a fleeting glance." The tension in the room was almost tangible, but Terrence maintained his measured tone. "I am not here to publicly humiliate anyone. I am here to rectify this profound issue. Because if we fail to treat every single customer with the respect they deserve, then we fail as a company. And I will not permit this company to fail." But as he stood there, observing their expressions transition from initial shock to deep, introspective reflection, Terrence knew this was merely the genesis of the profound changes he needed to implement. Terrence paused, allowing the meeting room to settle into a profound silence. The weight of his pronouncements had resonated deeply, and now came the most critical phase: concrete action. He recognized that simply identifying the problems was insufficient. He needed to pave the way toward a comprehensive resolution. "Here's precisely what will transpire," he continued, his voice calm yet imbued with unwavering resolve. "This is not about retribution or assigning blame. It is fundamentally about accountability and collective advancement. Every single one of us, myself undeniably included, bears a profound responsibility to uphold the foundational values upon which this company was meticulously constructed. Commencing today, we are instituting significant modifications." He turned to Brian, the store manager. Firstly, we are going to implement mandatory, comprehensive training on implicit bias and exemplary customer service. Not just exclusively here but rigorously across every single store in our chain. It is no longer sufficient to merely presume that individuals inherently understand how to treat others. We must systematically educate, actively reinforce, and consistently hold people answerable. Brian nodded, his expression a mixture of profound relief and renewed determination. Understood, Mr. Hall. I will personally ensure its immediate execution. Terrence addressed the collective group once more. Secondly, I will be personally visiting more stores in person and completely unannounced. This is not about catching anyone off guard or engaging in surprise inspections. It is fundamentally about maintaining a direct, tangible connection. I need to witness firsthand what is genuinely unfolding at the ground level. The employees exchanged nervous glances, yet there was a growing sense of shared understanding permeating the room. Terrence could discern that some of them, most notably Denise, were subtly nodding in clear agreement. Lastly, Terrence stated, his tone perceptibly softening, I am eager to hear from all of you. What elements are functioning effectively? What aspects are clearly not? If there are systemic issues pertaining to leadership or existing policies, I absolutely need to be informed. My door is perpetually open, but even more critically, I will ensure that you have a secure, anonymous channel to voice any concerns if you do not feel entirely comfortable approaching me directly. The employees appeared to relax slightly, and Terrence interpreted that subtle shift as an opportune moment to conclude on a sincerely heartfelt note. I embarked on the journey of founding this company because I harbored a deep desire to create something truly distinct, something inherently superior. A welcoming place where every individual, regardless of their identity, felt genuinely valued. Somewhere along the path, we regrettably lost a modicum of that original essence. But I am not and will not abandon that vision. I firmly believe we can collectively perform at a higher standard, and I am unequivocally counting on each and every one of you to assist in transforming that belief into a tangible reality. As the meeting formally concluded, Terrence intentionally approached Denise, the cashier who had consistently exhibited exemplary professionalism and genuine kindness. Thank you for being such a luminous presence today, he remarked, offering a sincere smile. Your outstanding attitude serves as a powerful reminder of precisely why I embarked on this entire endeavor. Denise returned his smile, her voice steady and clear. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I simply strive to treat people precisely how I myself would wish to be treated. Walking out of the store for the second time that momentous day, Terrence felt a complex mixture of profound exhaustion and burgeoning hope. The path ahead would undeniably be fraught with challenges, yet it was an absolutely imperative journey. He had been granted a profound wake-up call, and now it was unequivocally incumbent upon him to decisively act upon it. But as he drove away, Terrence couldn't help but experience a renewed, invigorated sense of profound purpose. He intuitively understood that sometimes, confronting uncomfortable truths was the sole viable means to progress, and that every incremental stride toward meaningful change commenced with one courageous individual willing to take that crucial initial step. If this narrative resonated with your own experiences, always remember that even the most seemingly insignificant actions possess the profound power to generate the most monumental impacts. Consistently treat all individuals with unwavering respect, courageously speak up whenever you witness injustice, and never cease your relentless pursuit of a fundamentally better, more equitable world. And naturally, don't forget to subscribe for a continuous stream of stories that serve to inspire transformative change.